Where were we?
Oh,
Sorry about that, everybody.
we talking to ourselves?
I know the camera just decided to die a swift death there. I'm not sure what happened, but through the magic power of editing, we won't see any of this. We were talking about, where were we, Richard? Help me out. Darren, you remember?
No, we were just talking about the impact of the collection and the importance of the estate and things along that lines.
Yeah, talk about learning about the estate piece. Yeah, I mean, because that's just you have to value it. You have to have it graded to do so, and then there's the appraisal piece. Because we were joking early. The government wants to know about these kinds of things, these major events.
They sure do.
Right. They certainly want. They're like the mafia. They want to be involved. So, again, for you to do it through the right channels so that, it doesn't come back on you, there's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
So, let's focus on some of the good stuff now. Out of all this stuff, what were you surprised to find? I mean, because you didn't have a lot of comic book knowledge when you came in.
Not a lot of comic book knowledge, but a lot of superhero and fantasy knowledge. I mean, that's the whole tragedy, is that I was always into that stuff as a kid. But yeah, exactly. And my father, I don't want to be dramatic about it, but he kind of ruined the hobby a little bit for me because, to me, comic book collecting was you go to a store, very rarely a con, and he visited the same couple of stores, come home with a bag, and you throw the stuff away, in a box forever. And that's not what I thought was really cool. But the stories, I was always a Superman maximalist, loved the stories, loved the movies. So I knew of grading. I mean, I had Brian, like I said, who was my best friend and lifelong collector to guide me. And then, certainly many others coming through. But certainly figuring out, we knew he had a Superman one, okay? And we knew he had the Batman one. Finding out that the Superman one was a 7.0.
Oh, wow.
And for it to be, at the time we graded it, the second nicest copy on earth.
Wow.
I mean, that's a moment that should be shared with my father,
right?
Who, acquired that book. He deserved to know. And I enjoyed that moment with Matt Nelson in the lobby of CGC in the heart of COVID by myself. So, again, yes, it's very good overall, but again, moments like that, you wish you just had different audiences to share.
Sure.
What's weird to me is that your dad was sending books to get slapped.
No, he was not.
Oh, he wasn't. Oh, you went.
I went.
Right.
Oh, no, I've done all of
so everything was raw.
everything.
Okay. Was it bagged and boarded or just
bagged and boarded? Sure. And not everything. But yes, the high majority. My father knew what he was doing to a point of, as far as, okay, this is special, old stuff. We need to preserve this. I mean, his Hulk ones, his X-Men ones, his Fantastic Four ones, his X-Men ones, his, Journey Mystery 83s. I mean, all the big books he treated very well. And that's why they're in such nice shape, is because they were just put away and not touched. Never saw air, never saw, the light of day. It's one
the basement?
Basements, bedrooms, extra rooms in the house. And this is what drove my mother totally insane. And in the film, we show clips of, how it was. And that's how we grew up. And I mean, imagine being a little kid and wanting to look through this stuff or curious and just not, it was totally taboo.
And your mom never snapped one day and took it to the curb while he was at the office?
He talked about it. I'm not kidding around, man. I mean, there are arguments that they would have over it. And, the label that we did, if you've had time to analyze or watch the custom label video, really explains a little bit, the life story and tries to graphically represent some of those struggles. Like there's a scale of justice right there in the middle, prominent. He was an attorney, but the scale of justice, the way the artist drew it, was the collectibles on one end and then the family on the other, and it's tipped to the collectibles.
Wow.
So there's powerful little, imagery like that we've tried to include in the label, and just what we're doing in the film to just let people know that, like you said, there's a balance here. But you're right. We're focusing on the positive. I'm building up and rounding out the collection and things that I really like. I really enjoy Golden Age sci-fi. Not as much of a horror guy, but definitely investment grade spec books. And I really, again, am enjoying the process of building the collection and turning it from my father's to mine and my friends.
50 sci-fi. So what do you like? All right. If I throw stuff at you, you tell me if you know about it. All right.
Oh, okay.
All right. Speed Carter, Spaceman, Space Squadron.
Yes.
See, I need-
Most Planet Comics. Weird Science, right? Smash Comics, love them.
I love the Smash. Those big robot covers.
Oh, exactly correct, right? And so anything like that. If you have Superman, we just picked up an action where Superman's punching a robot right in the chest. Anything like that is I'm gonna find interesting. I love the space depictions. Buck Rogers, you know what I mean, and that kind of stuff. We picked up a lot of that. I grew up watching that, you know what I mean. Of course, both the animated and the live action. So it's fun.
Do you have any Zoots for Richard?
You know what? Probably. And that's funny is that we get asked stuff like that all the time. And you would think I'd be able to answer that. But the problem is nothing was in order.
Yeah, how could you?
He didn't. Well, if there was stuff in order, maybe I'd have a better idea and I could make an inventory. I have every graded book catalog.
Okay.
But I don't have every raw. Nowhere, we don't have any raws catalog, to be honest with you, because they were all mixed up. So you'd go through a box and you'd be like, wow, nice Bugs Bunny right next to a Silver Surfer, right next to an X-Men, right next to a Flintstones. What? You know what I mean? What was the theory of how this box was?
It sounds like my collection.
Well, maybe, but I bet
And you said there's
can find
300,000 books in
at
the
least, yeah, at least. And we moved a lot. We sold several, and we have so many duplicates.
Oh,
That's
wow.
another thing. Oh, yes. So he went really heavy on first appearances. Okay, first issue, 200 copies of Ghost Rider 1, 200 copies of Star Wars.
Was this newsstand he was buying from when they came out, or do you think he was going to comic shops and collecting?
I think comic shops for sure, and he was a partner in a comic shop at the end.
Okay.
And I think that a little bit of that was, hey, we have 100 extra that we didn't sell. Oh, I'll take them.
Oh, so you probably have cases of Howard the Duck #1.
We have cases of certain books, and then we have certain books that, like, for example, like Strange Tales 169. We have half the 9/8 on the census.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Just because they're fairly scarce, and we had piles and piles of them. So we have like 8 or 9 copies of a 9/8 of that book. And then, the multiples is really the power of this collection. You see these collections surface, the Promise collection, like, oh my God, right? I mean, and you just look through it and you're like, how could these all be in such incredible shape? But the difference is, we will have sometimes hundreds and hundreds of copies of a book that might be worth $400 or $500. You know what I mean? Or more, or thousands. I mean, again, in the case of Ghost Rider 1's in the condition of.
What's the plan? Are you just blowing everything out as soon as you can, or are you planning?
No, being very methodical. First of all, I'm very sensitive. I would never flood the market with anything like that. That would never do that to people. We're talking a lot of ideas in that. We're talking about even having maybe a numbered series of repeat books. Like maybe it's like, okay, these are fantastic books. You could own one of 50 copies of that we're going to release in the wild of Ghost Rider 1. Keep it a little bit under control. So we have no urgency to sell. We have no urgency really to do anything. This isn't a livelihood thing whatsoever at all. So we can be methodical. My biggest preference is to really try to get this stuff in the hands of the people that appreciate it. I don't want to deal with a bunch of people that are coming in and be like, well, I'll give you $10 on the dollar, or 10 cents on the dollar, and whatever else. We have no urgency to do that. You know what I mean? So again, we can find the right fit for people and get people the books they want solely, whether it's through Heritage or other dealers. That's been a fun process. But it's been really fun to build a collection. I never thought I'd enjoy that as much as I'm enjoying, coming to cons or letting people know, like, hey, I'm really looking for this. Just picked up an Action 23 the other day, first Luther. You know what I mean? Needed to have it. An Action 6, first Jimmy Olsen. So those are, those moments when you find the book and you're there and you get it. But those are important books to us.
There's a super, you probably have it. I think it's an Action Jack Burnley cover where he's flying down and there's like guys with molten lava or melted steel.
Well, is it that one or is it where he's covering a radiation?
I'm confusing both of those.
Yes, you have both of those.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Both amazing covers.
You're keeping them.
Yes.
So,
yes.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so those things we'll keep, but we're also, we'll never sell, never. We're not selling any of our highest grade that's our only copy of. And we're not selling our last one usually if there's a book. Now, we made some of those mistakes. Like I sold a real nice Mask 1, that I didn't really know. Yeah, I know. And I mean, again, so stuff like that. Avengers 4, like a 9.6. I let go. And I thought I had another one. And I'm like, oh, no. I mean, again, bigger problems to have, right? But the point is, I'm trying to control those situations where it's like, okay, we're not giving away our best copy or our last copy of something. So we don't need to. We have so many other duplicates.
So, in terms of making the movie, I mean, how has that process been for you?
It's been very hard at times. It's been very fun at times. That was the idea of a high school friend of mine who is in LA. He's in Santa Clara, is that right?
Santa Clara?
Yep, Santa Clara. And I told him, again, when my father passed, we were friends, and I told him, I said, hey, it's you wouldn't believe what I have to deal with. He's like, really? And he's from Michigan, as we are, of course, and grew up together. And he came back in town over Thanksgiving holiday to visit his folks. And he said, yeah, I'm going to just get a couple interviews, see what this is about. And he kind of fell in love with the story and the idea and just everything there. And once he interviewed my mother, too, he's like, wow, there's some strong characters here. So that's how it unfolded. But it's been hard to go into the past and kind of open up to the world some of these family struggles. I mean, again, there was some deep pain about how my mother and we had to deal with this. I mean, he had Asperger's, which was undiagnosed, which is totally fine as long as you're aware of it. Right. You know what I mean? And if you realize, like, oh, okay, this is just how Dad is a little bit, or if he realizes, well, I struggle with some of these emotional connections and empathy and so on, but he fought it to the grave. And it was very hard because then it's like, well, then why you treat us? So the movie's been a double-edged sword, but I can tell you that hearing people say things that it's impacted them or the story has, I've had dozens and dozens of people that have come up to me and shook my hand and said, thank you for having the courage to do this. It's made me be a better father with this. It's made me check how I collect. It's made me check in with the family and see, is there any damage being done by what I'm doing? I did have one guy say, hey, look, I started really looking at my spending and realizing that I'm not going on vacation as much as I should maybe with my family and doing some other things. So, wow, what an impact. So
you're speaking our language, because that's one thing we talk about a lot on this podcast. If you've watched it, we talk about financial financial security and responsibility. And we always hear me on the podcast do my Susie Orman spiel, where you'll pay off your credit cards before you buy that Zoot 11 or 12. Is it 12?
Yeah.
Well, you show off a second. But so it's really great to hear you say that as well. The one thing I have to say is the documentary, your involvement so far and all the press you're doing, it's made you very press ready.
Oh, well, I mean, it's funny. People will be like, wow, I really enjoy watching in camera or something like that. And I just say to people, no one's an actor here. And we're just, but it makes it easy. And you guys kind of probably can relate in your own content. It makes it easy when you're telling the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
And it may sound funny, but it really does. When you're just, you don't have to think, you don't have to stumble, you don't have to try to make it sound a certain way. Just tell the truth, tell it how it was. And that's been some of the challenge in the film, is that some of those truths are very personal, as you can imagine, and very deep. I mean, and some of the stories, especially when I'm talking about my brother and growing up with him and not understanding, he had some struggles. You're telling that to the world, man. I mean, you're telling that to perfect strangers, and you don't know what's going to come your way from that. I have other businesses. How is that going to impact it? How my customers going to view me? These are all things that roll around in your head. So,
is your brother going to be well taken care of now?
My brother already was, and it's funny. He's such a capable guy. He works at the post office. He has a great warehouse job that he's fully, independent in. He drives himself. He does all that kind of stuff. It's just the financial stuff and the paperwork and anything insurance wise that, I'm his full guardian on that level. But the answer is my brother always has and will have more than enough financial resources. With him, we just make sure we try to get him socially engaged and having those experiences.
That's great. You have a fun question here in the chat. All right. From Michael Kim. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Oh, man. You know what? I grew up, I would say, up until the last 3, 4, 5 years, I would say Star Wars 100%. With what Star Wars is doing now, it's always kind of lost me with The Last Jedi and some of the other later things. But then Mandalorian pulled me back in. Ahsoka's been amazing. Loved Andor. But I really love Star Trek. I love the Star Trek concept. I love the Federation. I hope humans go that way one day, and all work together. So Are we talking in a battle, or are we talking about
Richard, this is your area. You take over.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek on TV. Not in the '60s, but still in syndication. Before I was exposed to Star Wars, and then Star Wars came out. The original Star Wars, the original trilogy, changed my life.
change your life?
Yes. And if you had asked me then, there would have been Star Trek or Star Wars. Now, I'm just like you. The last trilogy kind of lost me. Mandalorian really, I think, revitalized things. Ahsoka. So I think I'm more towards Star Wars now. The Star Trek shows that are out there now, I'm not been really enamored with. So it's a question you got to ask me at what period of my life.
and I think that's fair to not dodge it. We did have a funny One True Nerd King. Phil was in town. We were doing a recent live show. We had this debate, and we got it down where if there was a battle, we all felt that the Star Trek would come ahead, unless there was ground battles.
Okay.
Right. Well, but that's important to talk about, right?
That's with squish.
Absolutely. Star Trek doesn't concentrate on that level, but very cool debates to have. But I'm loving Strange New Worlds. I've seen every Star Trek there is. But same thing with Star Wars. So.
How many issues of Star Trek and how many issues of Star Wars #1 were there?
Star Wars #1, probably 150. Star Trek #1, only 3. However, I believe we have the nicest copy of the census.
Wow.
Richard?
Yeah. I believe we do. I'm 99% sure that's one of the ones.
Richard's looking for a 9.9.
Ooh, we do not have. There isn't a 9.9, so he'll keep hunting.
Yes.
But I do believe ours is
aspirational.
And that's also been a fun thing with the collection, too, is that, every once in a while we'll have that. Oh, wow, this is the nicest in the census. Or how about this has never been graded?
Wow.
We have some real. So that's Miss America.
Yeah.
That was very difficult to even find how CGC even registered that.
There's no comps.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been an interesting process. But again, I would say very humble. This could have happened to anyone. If your father had all these comics, they'd be yours.
They'd all be Red Rider.
How has CGC been as a partner? Because I'm sure they've worked pretty closely with you in this.
Matt's coming up himself to visit us on site the 19th through the 21st of this month. We're very excited. Obviously, we're going to be very prepped for him to do a massive amount of pre-screen. We have like 8,000 or 9,000 comics that need to be graded right now.
Wow.
Yeah, and exactly. And it's just like, because that's the decision you have to make is like, okay, are we grading everything like 400 hours and up? Normally people would do that. That's worth it. But for us, it's like, if we can get 80% of value without grading it, there's a lot of hassle. But now you have the label in play and people want the label. And I've been very humbled to have people approach us saying, oh man, I'd really love to own that book in the label. So CGC has been unbelievably accommodating. I was absolutely floored and honored is not even the right word when they approached us about the label opportunity. I mean, to be the first to ever do that. They've done all sorts of press. We have scholarships and giveaways that we give away books, and we're going to continue doing that. The last one, got a half hour of time with Matt Nelson, discuss grading. I mean, so they step up on that level. I would have to say I think we're a pretty good customer to them, knowing what we've spent. But at the same time, they've been very human and very accommodating, very emotional. They're a big part of the film. A lot of interview there. And, we just got some news that hasn't really been announced, but I can say it here, is that we just got approved for a magazine label. So not only will we have the comic Fantastic label, we'll have the magazine. So if people wanted those on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they wanted it on the other, the magazines as well, like the Marvel Presents 2, The Punisher,
right.
stuff like that.
Preview, yeah.
Yes, for a preview, yes, sir. So again, that's exciting.
Are they pressing your books?
Are they pressing them? We press our books.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
We do, but I will say that's an interesting situation. People can think what they want of it, but I have personally had good luck with having a book that was a 9.6 or 9.4 and going back and say, well, did you press this? Did you look at it? And we've had some bumps, and it's been some worthwhile. So, there's something to be said about the fact that if a company is offering a service, a paid service, it comes with this like almost dotted line responsibility. Like, if you're going to press my book, doesn't that mean it sort of should get the next grade up? No guarantees, but if it didn't happen often enough, then people really wouldn't do it.
Kind of implicit, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna look into the camera for that.
Yeah. So we're dancing with that like anyone else would.
Yeah.
But we're just doing it at a different scale, maybe. How I have it usually is that I do a pre-screen. I say, all right, because again, back to the philosophy is if you're going to pre-screen my book and you're going to say yes, it could benefit from pressing, how could it not get at least the next best?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How is that possible? So that seems to be money well spent in my book if that method works.
Very cool. Darren, thank you so much. Remind everybody where they can find you.
Well, you can find us at Fantastic_Comics on Instagram. I run that channel. Selling Superman Film on Instagram is for the film. And then SellingSuperman.com has the trailers for both the main actual documentary and also the label trailer as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
So good to
Keep
meet
making
you.
your content. I love watching you guys. Your
Say that again.
Brian's as well. Keep making your content. You're a favorite of mine. But Brian's as well. You keep it honest and cool and fun.
Well,
Thank
We're
you.
so
We really
excited
appreciate
to follow
it.
your
Thanks for-
progress. It's been amazing.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Bye.